Okay, so this is a general just explanation of the super group trick. It's an out of bounds which saves anywhere between I think the conclusion is it's between 8 seconds and 16 seconds, but you're not going to save more than 10 without losing your mind. So basically the point of this trick is to get out of bounds with the ghost and do a giant jump over the board, land later in this ghost driving section. There's already a ghost out of bounds down the hill where there's Phantom. That one's pretty simple, it saves 4 seconds, but over normal driving. But this one's just terrible. It's probably the worst trick in Halo 4, I would say, because it's terrible. So I'm going to be using this checkpoint the entire time, because I don't have trainer, and it's better to explain this way. So when you jump off this ramp right here, this is at the very beginning of the level, or of the ghost driving section. When you jump off this ramp, you're going to want to cut to the right and land about here. So there are a few mechanics that you should know about. First off, it's low gravity for this whole section, and also the ghost cooking mechanic, that's what I call it. It's called cooking because you're basically cooking your engines. By holding back and left trigger, you can see the engine becomes more and more, turned on. And a perfect indicator of when you're at max speed is you get these anime lines kind of just boost around you, like you're driving past, like anime lines. So that is a good indicator of what you're doing. So you're going to be cooking your engines for several portions of these jumps, and so let me just show you first off how you land onto the out of bounds section, or the part where you're going to land out of bounds. I'm going to cook my engines here by holding back and boosting, and then this part is terrible because not only is it just a bunch of inputs in a short amount of time, but when you reach this point, you get a screen shake from this Phantom over here crashing. So any reticle lineup is basically approximate because it's just flying around the screen. So what you gotta do is you gotta be in boost the entire time. The second you go off of this ramp, you let go of boost. Once you go off of the ramp, tap A just slightly, you start lifting your ghost nose, because that's what it is. I said A, I'm sorry, it's going to be a different input for whoever you are. You lift the nose of your ghost just as you come off of this, and then you hold back in the air for half a second, or for halfway through the jump, I just say half a second, and then you switch to forward. So this is terrible, but I'm going to try and demonstrate. So what you do is you hold forward, hold A, back, forward, just like that, and hopefully you land on it. That time I didn't because I wasn't lined up with my reticle, but most of the time that's how you get up there. Fortunately, if you want to practice the whole thing, you can just land on the side right here and do a little recovery and then climb up the rock like that. Now, honestly, most of the time, even when you're running an IL, you'll bounce off and just land down here. If that happens, all you have to do is get the nose of your ghost to the right of this little spot right here that I'm shooting at, and then you'll be able to just climb straight up. It only loses about half a second as to just directly landing on this. Getting stuck on this is difficult even with the lineup, and if you're really struggling with this, you can just drive right into this crevice, the wall, the invisible barrier, which is right here. Will push you right here, and then you can back up and climb right up the wall. Now if you're going to try and climb up the wall, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to hold A and just boost up, and hold forward a little bit. If you're coming up the rock and you're losing momentum like this, all you need to do is just release and hold, lift your ghost again. I'm saying A. A means lift your ghost just because that's my schematic. And you can climb right up to the top of this. It's actually extremely free. I just killed myself. It's actually very free to climb up that rock. Once you get to the top, and here, I'm going to show you basically what it is if you want to just land on here consistently. You can just bump all the way to the left, and then you're down here, as opposed to right here, which is where you landed the guy out. And once you get to the top, you're going to kind of want to turn to the left a bit like this, and that way you can just drive right onto the surface without catching air and losing time. Now, if you see the surface of this rock, you'll see it's at a slant right here, and then it becomes flat at the top. Most of these rocks are a lie. Most of them are just flat surfaces that are just disguised with general textures. So you don't want to associate your driving so much with whether or not there's a bump right here, because this doesn't have a bump at all. So what you're going to want to do is ideally you'll be at full boost right here by cooking your ghost engines, and just generally from driving. So what you're going to want to do is once you come over the top of this, you're going to want to tap back so that way you don't catch any air going over this, so that you can make the jump onto the next rock. So by doing that, what you're going to do, what is happening? Oh, and also there's a barrier still here. It's the same barrier. You're going to be to the left of this, or to the right of this. So what you're going to want to do is full boost, tap back, and then hold A to lift your ghost nose, and you'll land right on this rock right here. Now, this jump is a bit worse, because you don't want to be at full speed. And the reason for that, and the reason for pretty much every single jump in this trick, is that how accurately you land your previous jump determines how well you're going to be able to do your next jump, how accurately you're going to land the next one. And it's pretty precise, so if you fuck up one jump, it's probably going to screw up the next one. So what you're aiming for is basically a general area in this circle that I'm trying to shoot out. None of the bullets are really appearing. So you want to be in like this quadrant of the rock, I think is a better way of putting it. So when you land on this, you want to hold back and come to a full stop, because you're going to be facing in this direction, and then when you're holding back, turn to the right to make the next jump. And that's just important. It's pretty much unavoidable. You can't make this turn at full speed. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to be back here. And again, as you can see, this rock also does a little dip like this. It's better to be just on the edge of this dip, and then just hold forward and lift your ghost nose, and you'll land. Well, you won't miss the jump like I did, because I'm terrible, but you'll be able to land over there. And I'm going to explain why I bounced there, because that ridgeline, there's a reason we can't drive on that ridgeline. I'm just committing suicide over and over now. So that ridgeline, again, just like other things, it's not very intuitive, but it does have variation. The most dramatic one is that you can see there is a rock protruding out of the top of that. That one is real. That one will actually fuck you up. You're going to want to avoid it. And then there's a second one, which is even worse, which is behind it. So if I'm going to just drive on this casually, like as if I'm just trying to get over there, you'll see this right here is very much real. You have to be very careful to get over it. Now the one that you have to worry about is invisible, and it's right about here. This little lip right here. So when you're making that jump, a lot of the time you'll land just on this little ledge that I'm spinning around on, and that will screw you up. So ideally you want to land here or further forward when you make that jump. Now this part is going to be kind of hard to demonstrate, because once you pass this line that I'm drawing right here, there is a kill timer, because normally what you're doing is you're going down the tunnel, and the next section is a bunch of falling rocks, and you have to make it through before the rocks, sandwich you, and then you blow up into a pile of rocks, because everything is rocks. So basically the game is checking for you to be a certain amount of distance in that direction after, I think it's about 12 seconds. It might be different, but after a certain amount of time. If not, it will blow you up, revert checkpoint. So you have to basically do the rest of this, what I'm about to do, without flipping, without bumping into stuff too much, so that you're not too slow that you get killed by that. Now there's one more jump. I'm actually able to avoid that timer entirely by taking a back door. This back door wasn't found until a while ago, or a while after, after this trick was found. I'm going to totally scuff this up, aren't I? Please don't bounce. I bounced. So yeah, this trick, I think 2 world records were already up with this trick before this little side thing was even found. And this side thing, it might have implications, because you can't get killed by the barrier, but I do think it might be slower. I haven't really compared, because it's essentially the same thing and the same level of difficulty, but I do think it's marginally slower. So you're able to land below this rock, and then just jump onto the next platform, like so. And what you're really doing normally is just jumping off of that rock and landing right here. I'm going to come back to this jump and basically doing this with the timer in about a minute, because it's this is the hardest part of the trick. This and landing onto the rock in the IL fashion are the 2 parts that make this absolutely terrible. So if you look at the floor of this, you'll be able to see that it's at a slant right here, and then as you move, it becomes less and less of a slant until you reach a certain point, and that certain point is right behind this rock that is protruding right here. and this rock is where you're going to want to land right next to when you jump off of this mountain back here. So once you land on this rock, and I'm going to simulate by having full engines, and by the way, you can climb on top of both of these and do a similar style jump as to what I'm about to do, but none of them are generally fast as doing it the way that it's done in the IL, and it usually doesn't put you in a place that's ideal for re-entering the map. So what you do is you put your engines here, and make sure I'm past it, okay? And you hold forward once you're going to make the jump, and then you want to just tap A once you go off the edge. There has not been a good lineup that's been developed here. Most of that is due to when you make this jump, you generally kind of land in a little bit of a chaotic way, and when you're doing this in the IL, it's a bit, it's a bit chaotic. You have to be fast. It's kind of YOLO. So there isn't really so much of a lineup, but in general, by just doing it this way, you'll consistently get the right distance to be able to land. And I'll explain how you can land in a way that doesn't kill you consistently. So let me just take an attempt at doing a regular super Goob right here. I think I fucked this up because my ghost is turning at an angle. No, we're good, but I died. Okay, so I did fuck it up. Alright, so, going back to how you do this in the IL, how you do this earlier jump right here, I'm trying to hit one of the harder stick landings so that I can show you, but as you can see, even if you miss that, you can still just climb right up the mountain anyway, right? Going up from the bottom. Other people have developed lineups for that. I just have mine, but whatever works for you. Also, if you do, for whatever reason, land down here, you can just climb right back up on this rock. So as you can see, I'm in this quadrant of the rock and in this corner, and I am able to make this jump, like so. Okay, this is scuffed, and I messed it up. Okay, yeah, so, again, these things take a lot of practice. For me to basically be able to do it about 1 in 4, took me, I would say, about 70 hours. Maybe that's a little much. Maybe it was more like 50 hours, but it takes a lot of practice to be able to do this. This is why this is just a miserable trick. And, there are other aspects of this. I'm just going to mention them for a second. The ghost likes to go inside the ground. For whatever reason, and this is a problem in Halo Reach as well, the ghost likes to think, I am driving down, so therefore I'm trying to drive inside of the ground. So that'll happen just as often as whenever you're driving the ghost down the path, but it does happen, so that is just something to look out for. Or maybe you'll just get some weird geometry launches or something like that. It's just nothing that's specific to this trick will cause a specific kind of crazy launch or anything. You don't have that problem, but it's a thing to look out for. So if I just make this jump, and boom, right there, you can see I was short, so I hit the far lip, and that's the one that you want to look out for. So you want to be just able to be further ahead than I am there, and that way you'll be able to make the jump. Though there are instances where you do hit that anyway, and okay, let's figure it out. There are instances where you do hit that anyway, and you still will be able to drive forward. I don't know why it works. I don't know why it just sometimes screws you, but not every time. But that is just what happens. I've been able to get this stick with maybe 1 or 2 hours of practice. I'm just going over and over it down about 50%. And I'm fairly rusty as I haven't done this in a couple of weeks. That said, I want to demonstrate that looking a little bit past will help you land on this rock a bit better. You don't want to look at this, you want to look more towards this part of the rock when you're making that jump, because that way you're actually jumping across diagonally. So, actually I'll show that in a little bit. I want to be able to hit this once just to be able to demonstrate landing. There is one more thing that I will show you about this jump right here, and this is the most miserable jump of it all, but that's a perfect landing right there. Right next to the rock, tap A, hold forward, and this part is a bit of a roll, and I'm short, but I live. I can demonstrate. So yeah, this is slow because, again, low gravity meant I'm falling down slower, but you have to hit this wall to survive. If you land right here, I've only ever had it happen once, and it was in a live run where I didn't explode on the ground right here. I was very lucky, and that basically saved the run for me. But, when you land right here, you want to basically clip one of these so that you don't blow up. So Typically, you want to aim for these rocks right here. These rocks you never explode on, and I don't know why. This one, this is a set piece right here. If I drive a little far back, you'll be able to see it'll... Here, let me see if I can put the trigger. Oh, they're already up. Okay. So, this rock and this rock, if you land on them, they will just rise up out of the ground. They're part of this whole sequence where this thing falls down and blocks the jump. So you don't want to do that because basically you'll just get sent way up in the air and take half an hour to fall down. And most of the time you just explode whenever you touch these kind of rocks. They're kind of called red rocks because they're a little bit redder than all their surrounding environment. So try and avoid landing on that as much as possible. But you're going to want to basically just try and skirt yourself down here. If you flip, it still saves time. When I originally timed this, I timed it with a flip, with 2 extra stops than I demonstrated, and it was about 4 seconds of time save, so don't worry too much about that. Unfortunately, sometimes you can hit this rock and get a very bad bounce and splatter on this wall, but that's not very common. And one more thing to note is that when you're making that jump, you're going to want to tilt your ghost a little bit to the side so that the lowest point of your ghost is the wing, so that way if something makes contact, it's not the body of the ghost, it's the wing of the ghost, and that's what takes most of the damage, and that'll raise your survivability. So I want to demonstrate one more thing before I go back up there to explain the last thing about this. When you're taking the jump, and let's just say this is the ramp that you just jumped off, just to... Oh, that's right. I'll demonstrate right here. I forgot about the kill title. So, when you're taking that big jump, let's say this is the big jump right here, a lot of people have the misconception that this is what the platform you're landing on is like, when if this is the big jump right here, it's actually more like this. It's actually at an angle, the tunnel is moving away from you, and so on, so you want to kind of jump off, not completely as far right as possible, but almost as far right as possible. The other thing is that, much like this, the ramp that you're jumping off is at a slant. So the further left you're at on the ramp that you're jumping off, the higher you will be, which is better for the jump. However, because this thing is at a slant, or at a curve, not at a slant, the further away the jump will be. So the real, I would say, Cinderella, this Goldilocks zone of it is just to the side of it. I'll demonstrate it real quick right after I show you something. To the left, and this is just going to be inbounds, to the left of the regular path, which is right here. So this is where you take the big jump, and over there is the fake path. There is an invisible barrier right here, and I really took that short, so it was probably hard for you to see, but if you saw my contrails, you'll be able to see it was pushing me to the side. You can get stuck on top of that, so you don't want to take that jump super short. It's a bit precise. I'm gonna come back to inputs real quick and just do a run through in just a moment. So I'm gonna come over here and take the back door to just show you where the ideal spot to jump off of is. So this is the back door path. You don't hit the timer, it's a bit slower. So ideally you want to jump off right around here. And there's one more thing to note. There is a slant right here, so you don't want to take it too slow. If you land too far forward, you're either dead or you have a moment to just back up for a second, because you will just fall off the edge of this. You won't be able to get a ramp out of it. So looking at this, okay, there it is. So looking at this jump, you're going to want to basically do it right off of this spot. You see there's a shadow. You kind of want to be it's not a direct dark and white, but you kind of want to be on the lighter side of where it's fading before doing this. And it's very important to release Lift Ghost at the apex. I was short there, that's because I was too close to it. It is fairly precise. You don't actually have a lot of wiggle room on that last jump, and that's what makes it truly terrible, because the jump before is just, it's very easy for your ghost to spin out. So coming back to inputs, what you want to do is you want to tap back right here, hold A, hold Lift Ghost, and then land on this, and you can hold back while you're making this jump to land in the quadrant of the rock that you want to land on. Hold forward, Lift Ghost, land right here, then you want to line up with that rock right there, and then just land right on the platform, tap A, make sure you release before it's at the apex, and you're holding forward before you even make the jump. Now sometimes, and to be honest, it still isn't entirely clear, sometimes you just will come too short. It hasn't really been completely understood at this point, but it generally, if you follow that setup, it'll generally do it. Generally, most of the reasons why that happens is either A, you held A for too long, so held lift ghost for too long, or you landed too far forward. Another very important aspect of that jump is that you need to retain momentum. You cannot come to a full stop and expect to make it every time, because retaining momentum is key to being able to do that. To be honest, I don't know about how to animate lines for that. I wasn't really completely checking. This is something that you need to practice for the rest of your life. And yeah, that's just bad driving right there. See? So, look, I've been doing this for a long time, and it's just still not completely consistent for me. Hence why it's IL only. But yeah, that's basically Super Goob. Just a basic tutorial on how it works, what you want to do. I think there was one thing I didn't show, and that was the lineup for the big ramp jump. I'm gonna just try and do that real quick. See? And this is what's nice. This getting over here without being a complete sweat is completely free. Let me take a look. So we'll just get over there real quick. Back. Jump. Okay, I'm sure. Baby. So you see there's two rocks protruding. The way you want to jump off is basically right on this part of this one that sticks out right here. You basically want your right wing of the ghost to be touching the very peak of that little rock that's sticking out. And that's the best lineup that exists for that jump. And that'll generally get you in the area that you want to land. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how you basically take the jump when you're in the air, because it is extremely easy to just overshoot it, totally screw yourself. So you basically never hold A, hold forward and boost. Once you're at the apex of your jump, you're going to want to release boost. A little far forward here, try this, and that way you will land in an ideal location for this jump. And the most frustrating, look, perfect example, if you land directly at the bottom, you will explode. Sometimes you're going to be a little short, sometimes you're going to be a little far, but most of the time you're going to land right on the inside of the wall and clip one of the rocks and bounce around in the path until you can start driving. There's a little bit of randomness with flipping and bouncing around once you do land, but generally if you make it down here you're saving time unless some crazy nonsense happens. Another thing I'm going to note just before I end this is that there are several other ways of getting out of bounds as a result of doing this trick, and you're able to climb out and get on top of the tunnel, and as well as on top of most of the preceding sections all the way up to the second tunnel. So yeah, that's basically a tutorial on Super Goob. I'm gonna go.